here. We are recording with Joe Glube. You mentioned that about your ears just now. I had an ear infection in Croatia that left me with like ringing in the ears that's still lingering a little bit. And I didn't know I somehow got a double ear infection. I never get ear infections.
Like both ears?
Both ears.
Really?
I go to the doctor there and I'm like, yeah, my ears are kind of clogged and kind of like ringing a little bit. And she looks in my ears and she has like a physical reaction, like, whoa. And she kind of backs up.
like sludge.
Yeah. She's like, you really have like some serious ear infections. I'm like, really? I never get that. And, they put me on antibiotics and, eventually clears up, but it's left me with a lingering I've always had a bit of tinnitus, I think it's called. Always, if I go to the gym and after I work out a little bit, I hear it a bit stronger. And it's one of the ear people were telling me the flow of air and why that happens and all this stuff. But it's left me with this tinnitus and it's going away, but it's like a slow process.
Yeah.
So and now I've learned that some people, it takes 5-6 months for it to fully go away. And I'm on like month 4 and I can see it's progressing and going away, but it's an awful little thing to deal with. I'm not going to lie.
So I've had it. I don't know if it's tinnitus or tinnitus.
Tinnitus. I think it's tinnitus.
And, I've been to too many rock concerts.
Yeah. And you know what? I used to also work construction where they were just like blowing things up next to me constantly. We had no protection, but rock concerts might be even worse actually, Joe.
So
you're not allowed to have fun, Joe.
When I'm fatigued, I'm not allowed to have fun. I never have fun. When I'm fatigued, I get ringing in my ears now. Like if I don't get enough sleep or like you say, exercise.
That's actually what's lingering for me. It's pretty much gone, but now we traveled to Florida. We're looking at a bunch of properties down there, traveled a bunch of days, had a bunch of alcohol. I don't usually drink, but I'll usually have 2 glasses of wine if I'm going to have a bit of alcohol. A couple nights I had 3 or 4 glasses of wine. That's just way too much. And then coming back, going to the gym, I'm tired and then it kind of.
Yeah, I think that's what does it. I think, but also I go to the audiologist every year and.
Oh, you do, eh?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And because they track it.
I know, they've done the measurements with me and it's so insightful.
If you keep going to the same people, they'll eventually have like a chart, And so, this last year or the year before, they explained the little filaments in there get a little bit damaged. Once they're damaged for good, right? And infections or impact can damage them a little bit. Hopefully you don't really suffer from it.
No, luckily,
it's like another voice in your head.
Yeah, I have many voices going on, Joe. So
a lot of activity going on in there. So just one more
maybe
thing.
It just helps. I kind of walk around distracted a little bit more, so my mind doesn't race into these weird rabbit holes that I like to go down. So maybe it's actually a net positive for humanity that I have. But, I wanted to talk to you briefly before we get into some other matters. I'm looking. I thought I was about to buy a car. I'm thinking of maybe leasing a car. My daughter's driving now. We need another vehicle in the house. Yeah. And my wife's car, I think, will become my daughter's car.
Yeah.
Are you still doing the whole lease thing?
Yeah, so I run a company called Car Cost Canada, and Car Cost Canada helps Canadian consumers understand the cost of a new car and used cars as well. And we connect people to car dealers. So we don't actually sell cars ourselves. We have all the secret information like the hidden rebates, the dealer's cost, and what is a fair price to pay for a car given different market conditions. So if you look at the last 5 years, they were giving cars away in 2018, 2019.
Couldn't get a car
by 2021, 2022.
Yeah, where are we now?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Are you giving them away again?
I think you'll appreciate that the demand for consumption is reduced. And so
we can see that in the real estate world, Joe. We have front row seat.
Yes. So consumption demand is being crushed, and I think we are. So I don't know. You probably know this, but StatsCan revised the previous quarter so that we're not technically in a recession. Otherwise, we would already have 2 quarters.
I love how they do these revisions.
Right? So they revise it from a negative to a positive.
Put a headline out.
We're 0.4 ahead. We were 0.4 behind, but we don't want to announce we're in a technical
We re-looked at the data.
We're actually all liberals here who run this, so we don't want to make the liberal government look any worse than they already do. So we're not going to say we're in a technical recession.
Oh my God, what a world.
But we're in a recessionary environment, right? So what's happening is right there.
We're not here to talk about this. Just, if anyone listening, there are other matters to discuss. This is selfish of me right now.
So anyway, supply in the U.S. for cars has exploded because the manufacturers have sorted, for the most part, their supply challenges. Chinese shipping is back to relative normal. And so the end result is the Americans get the cars first because the cars sell in the U.S. for a lot more net dollars than they do in Canada. So like a car that you look at in Canada that's $50,000, in the U.S. it's $50,000 U.S.
Really?
Yeah.
For some reason, I always thought it was cheaper.
No, it's typically the Americans have been, over the last 30 years, there's been 25 years where the Americans have come up here and scooped up all the used cars, and 5 years, where it wasn't worth it.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So one of the reasons we had a shortage of used cars is because when there was a shortage of new cars in the U.S., the Americans were all up here buying all our cars and taking them back to the U.S. and selling them down there. There's actually one of the largest Canadian car dealers in Quebec doesn't have a used car department, but they sell more cars than anybody else for their brand. And I asked him, why don't you guys have a used car department? And he's like, well, I can just ship them to the U.S. I don't have any retail consumers. I don't have any headaches.
I get the currency arbitrage on that.
Yeah. Like it's
beautiful.
Right? And he ships like 1,000 cars a month or 800 cars a month to the U.S. So I don't know if he's still doing it.
So you guys will just break it down for somebody saying, hey, here's the best price you're going to get. Here's the best rebates going on.
Yeah. So you can,
it's a subscription or a one-time fee to go through you?
No, it's to get the basic level of service. It's free. So you go to carcostcanada.com and it's a free service, and you get a free report that shows you what the dealer's cost is for the car that you're interested in, what the best interest rate available for the car you're interested in is, what the rebates are.
What about for leasing? Nothing with leasing.
No, we give you the leasing rates as well, but we don't give you leasing calculations for free. So if you pay us after doing that first report, if you say, well, I'm really interested and I really would like some help, for between $100 and $200 one-time fee, somebody like me who's an expert in the car business will walk you through that process and help you connect with a car dealer who will help finish the deal. And, we'll evaluate whether or not it's good value, bad value. We'll find it. We'll go out and find somebody who gives you a better quote than maybe what you've already seen.
So people in the industry who work with you. And
yeah, so Car Cost Canada has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of car dealers all across Canada who work with us and are recommended by us to treat consumers better than maybe the average car dealer. And so it's all brands except for factory direct brands. So we don't there's nothing we can do about a Tesla being retailed because there's no cost. You just pay what they tell you. And last week you pay $50,000. This week you pay $48,000. Who knows what you'll pay next week? But that's also an indication of what I was saying before, what I was about to say about supply. So because supply is ramping up, people like Tesla are the leading edge of dropping prices. I just saw an article this morning that says that by the middle of next year, car prices will be flat from last year. There will be no growth in the cost of new cars. That's their projection.
I feel like cars are also, the technology is changing so fast that 4 years from now, like to me, the Ford F-150 electric, we've heard a lot of weird stories about it. Yeah. But I feel like 4 years from now, there are a lot of changes. We're going through this massive innovation change in the industry.
I like leasing for the headline reasons that you're thinking about, and also the undertone reasons that people don't think about. So what happens if something changes in 2 years and you have a finance where you paid the tax and you've borrowed the money with zero down? So you take a 5 or 6 year finance, the payment is much, much higher than the lease. If you want to get rid of that car and you go limping into the car dealership and say, can you buy my car back? They're going to look at how much you owe. And because you paid a 13% premium, which is your real dollars out of at the top, it's hard to recover it on that loan. Whereas on the lease, you're paying the tax as you go monthly. So the new consumer only has to undergo the tax going forward. So the person who takes your lease isn't obligated to
I never thought of it that way.
Right? So it's a lot easier to assume, quote unquote, take over a lease than it is to take over a car loan.
And people still do that? There's
it's a huge business.
I knew there was before.
Lease takeovers are
Lease
huge.
Busters, I got an Acura way back when.
So Lease Busters is an affiliated company of Car Cost Canada. The same guy owns both companies.
Oh, okay. I used them way back when Nick and I needed to have a nice car and I couldn't really afford one.
Yeah.
I went to Lease Busters. Somebody was dumping a nice Acura. I got a great deal.
It's gold.
Yeah.
So to give you an idea, when you're shopping for a new car today, like over the last year, let's say you're looking for an EV in Canada. So an EV in the States, they're discounting. They're giving them away. Okay? There's too many EVs on the lot.
Come on.
There's too many EVs on the lot. Thousands of overstock. Okay? So they're giving thousands off. In Canada, they're still holding for love or money and charging you over list price. But 2 years ago, a similar EV, like a Hyundai Kona or something like that, and again, a Tesla is another good example, a Model 3. 2 years ago, a Model 3 might have been, let's say, 56 grand, and then it went up to 65 grand. So if somebody wants to get out of their Tesla at 56 that they bought for 56 grand and they got 2 years left on the lease, then you could take over that lease and probably pay less than what a new Tesla costs per month. Wow. But you only get it for 2 years.
Yeah, it makes sense. Right? When you break it out like that, makes sense.
So not every deal's like that. And then some consumers will have gotten raked over the coals and now they're desperate to get out because they can't afford it or whatever. And they'll pony up like $5 grand. Like, here's a check for $5 grand and my car.
I think that's what I got on the Lease Busters way back when. She wanted out of this Acura so quickly.
Yeah.
I got like a ridiculous payment because that's what it was. She had put a bit down on this lease to drop.
Yeah, so you got free money.
I got free money on this lease. My payments were lower. I thought it was, I just had to go to Acura Sureway and sign over the lease paper. And I walked away with this beautiful car. It was a win.
So here's the worst thing that people don't understand about new car legislation in Ontario today. And this is really Ontario centric, but it's true of many provinces in the country because Ontario kind of drives the bus for a lot of things. So if you have a minor fender bender with your car and you claim it on insurance because it's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, doesn't matter if you're at fault, has nothing to do with fault. It's strictly what happens to the car. The car got fixed by the car insurance company. Car insurance companies, the governments of all the provincial governments and the used car industry are all in cahoots because of consumer protection legislation that says we don't want the new used car buyer to be screwed over and not know there was an accident. So what ends up happening is all accidents that you pay for in a normal fashion are recorded against the VIN number of the car. Okay? So if you have a car that you've bought and you're trading it in and it's had a minor fender bender, they devalue the car against you because they know they can't sell it to the next consumer for the same money as one that hasn't had an accident. So a car that's had any kind of a smash that's been recorded on insurance is worth less than a car that hasn't. With a trade-in, you're going to suffer that decline in value.
Through insurance.
No. Well, say you don't go through insurance. The car guys for 50 years have been experts at identifying damaged cars that have been repaired.
Yeah, got it.
So I can look at any car and tell you if it's been painted.
No, you can't.
Any car.
Come on.
Any car.
We're going outside to my car later.
Yeah, I can find it. I can find it because there's telltale stuff. When it's been painted at the factory, the seams are all uniform. When they're painted afterwards, they're painted typically on the car, so the leading edges, the bottom of the door or the top of the door will have a little extra, a little bit too little paint. There's a lot of ways to find painted cars. So if it's been painted, it's a problem. It's going to get devalued. With a lease, the leasing company is the owner of the car. They carry their own insurance to guarantee against the devaluation that they're going to experience when you drop the keys off, so they don't hold you liable for that damage.
I just haven't liked payment. I kind of went through always having payments, then I went through a period of my time where I didn't have to have payments. Yeah. So I currently don't have car payments, but now I'm like, maybe this next one I do entertain a lease.
But it depends on your needs. If you're going to keep it for 10 years, having 2 4-year leases and then a 2-year lease is way more expensive.
Yeah, I just feel like I want to ride out the next few years with this transition in the car industry. I feel like so much is happening right now. I wouldn't mind just doing this little 4-year stop.
Who's it going to be for, Carol?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the advantage for somebody like Carol is that I'm looking at a picture of her, is that, hi, Carol. Hey. So the advantage for Carol is, you guys are doing great in your lives. why not give her a nice car every 3 or 4 years that gets the latest safety technology, that gets the latest features, that gets the latest and greatest of everything? It doesn't have to be a top of the line, G-Wagon, right?
No, we're not going there.
No, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah,
but if you get whatever price, mid-sized, SUV today, Lexus RX or whatever, it's way, way, way better than one from 5 years ago, and way, way better than one from 10 years ago.
Yeah, it really feels
so if you hold on to, and they're going to continue, that's going to continue. It's always going to continue because they always are trying to leapfrog each other, right? So today I love my, Volvo, whatever, right? Tomorrow I see this technology and, I don't want to commit to it. I'm a little worried about what happens when it's not in warranty anymore. So I get a lease that's 3 years. It's got a 3-year warranty and here's the keys. It doesn't matter if it got smashed.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. The only issue is mileage, and the only issue is ensuring that you can pay for it, as long as you can pay for it. Yeah. But again, it's way more expensive net than keeping a car for 10 years. Mm-hmm. Right?
No, agreed. And she's been really good at just taking care of her cars. We've always kind of gone the 10-year thing.
Right.
Low kilometer.
Absolutely.
She takes great care of it.
Well, that's the Karadza family. Like, what of the famous story of the Civic, right? Or the Civic or the Accord or whatever.
We both pushed them. Nick pushed it harder than me, but we both pushed it. Honda Civics are great. I loved my Honda Civic. And $80 for a new tire.
Yeah.
I think when I'm
not 80 anymore.
No, well, in my brain, it's still substantially cheap. I remember when I don't drive an X5 anymore, but I was driving the X5 and I had one of those run flats.
Yeah.
And I bought the story that they couldn't be repaired. So I went back to the dealer to get it repaired, and they're like, that's going to be $650 plus tax plus install. I don't know. It was like $850. I'm like, well, time out. I just have like a flat here. Can you just like seal the hole? Like the tire looks completely fine to me. And then the first time I actually paid it, and it scarred me for life, I think. And then one of the car guys I met is like, no, we can totally repair that. I think it goes out of the run flat warranty or whatever.
Right.
And next time I repaired it, I think for like $65 or whatever he charged me.
Yeah.
But those tires, holy smokes. Anyway, I wanted to, so thanks for all that wise words of wisdom from your...
Anybody who wants any help, carcostcanada.com.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Car buying,
writing that down.
For car buying, for car leasing, for new cars, for used cars, carcostcanada.com.
And before you leave, we're walking the parking lot and you're going to put stickers on everyone's car who you can tell had a paint job after the factory. Excuse me, looks like you've had a paint job. We've identified you with a sticker.
Yeah. You need to trade that car in.
Feels like a lot of mess going on in the whole world right now when I just said that. Anyway, what have you been up to? The last time you were on, you gave us, for anyone listening, it was some time ago, and it was probably the most jaw-dropping podcast I had ever done, and still to this day, just going through your past. We'll put a link to that. I never say this, but we will put a link to that previous episode in the show notes. If you want to know, that was just so insightful for
That's
you.
Not good.
No, for you to go through what you've been through. Like, you have an incredible journey and story, and like you're an incredible human.
Well, thank you. My goal coming into this was not to get an ego stroke, so we'll see.
No.
See what ends up happening.
What's going on now with you? Like, who are you helping? What are you up to? What's going on with Joe?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to do this for anybody who doesn't want to slog through the other message is to say that, hi, I'm Joe and I'm a drug addict. And luckily I don't use drugs anymore and haven't for a long time. I was showing Tom beforehand. I'll flash it. I'll do that. It's a little medallion
that I tried to steal from you.
Yeah, I tried to steal it. It looked like Bitcoin. No. He's like, is that does that represent?
Is that a physical representation of Bitcoin?
Anyways, so I've been clean a long time. I've been clean and sober a long, long time. 29 years. It'll be 30 years on December 18th.
Wow, congrats.
So a long time. My journey prior to that, actually, I had two very interesting conversations while waiting for Tom, who was late today. He asked me to come early, and then he shows up late. Anyways, one was with Anthony in your office. Another was Josh, one of your
oh wow, you're meeting everyone.
And the conversation with Anthony, he said, what was interesting and unique about the last podcast was that probably a lot of people feel some of those feelings, have made some of those decisions, have had some of those problems, but aren't prepared to publicly talk about it. And also, can benefit from from hearing kind of how you get through it, how I got through it. And so that's kind of what Anthony said that I thought was neat. And yeah, like, and then I told Josh, he said, what do you do for a career? And I said, well, I've been in the car business since I was, quite young. And I said, it's interesting because one of the things I'm going to say in this podcast is that I used to steal cars, then I started selling cars.
Hey, you probably know a lot about them. If you
I
stole
do a
them.
lot about cars.
It's like my friends who used to be the best thieves are now all cops.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just how it works.
And I actually know somebody who was a cop who wound up incarcerated for a long time as a drug addict.
Oh, gee.
And they were a cop. They were, they did a whole bunch of things. They were a cop, then they were a criminal, and now they're, now they're not. Now they're neither.
Yeah.
So, my journey for addiction today, it's framed under mental health. So, in the 80s and 90s and before that, there was definitely much more of a stigma. It was really hard to comprehend. I come from a good family. There's no obvious signs of addiction or trauma, and there really was no trauma. It's truly how I interpreted things that happened to me with my, what I would call today, juvenile or immature mind.
Oh, that's interesting. So it was your processing.
So it was my interpretation of my own experiences that led me to a series of conclusions, that led me to a series of behaviors, that led me to a series of additional results and conclusions.
I shouldn't smile. I just flashing back to some of your stories are just so wild.
Yeah. So like, I'll tell you this. I've been to another practitioner this morning. I went to a service provider this morning for my chiropractor. And my chiropractor is a wonderful, wonderful guy and very spiritual. And I said to him, one of the reasons that I associate myself with certain service providers is because they provide spiritual support in ways that sometimes they understand, sometimes they don't understand. And so, when I was saying about, my actions produce certain results, my continuous repeated actions produced certain results, I thought of you and a rant that you probably wrote sometime in the last 3, 4, 5 months that was related to that, where you're talking about, if I do consistent work over time, I get certain results. If I don't do the work, how can I possibly expect those results? Well, if the work is negative, which it was for me for a long time, I resisted authority, I resisted my family, I resisted school, I resisted everything. I bought into the counterculture and I lived that life. I got a certain set of results. I wound up incarcerated. I wound up miserable. I wound up thinking I was insane. Convinced I was insane.
Wow.
And, what's interesting to me is when I started to try to stop and couldn't stop the life that I was living, that just emphasized that I was insane. And today, I see people who are going through the same thing. Like everybody's aware, or maybe not everybody's aware, but there's a huge, there's a pandemic that's killing a lot more people than it's not a pandemic, it's an epidemic.
Are you talking about this fentanyl thing?
Yeah, drug. Yeah. And there's
so what is, yeah, two. What's going on?
There's two. There's fentanyl and there's methamphetamines and they're derivatives. And basically one is opiates and one is, one's an amphetamine. And so these are street drugs that that can be consumed in micro doses, like the head of your pen, the little part, the roller ball part, right? So that silvery, coppery part on the tip of your pen, that's enough fentanyl to kill somebody.
Wow.
So imagine you're a street addict and you want to use some drugs to get high and you've just put a little teeny tiny too much in and then you're dead. And so, you can look it up. BCE.
And fentanyl is a derivative of
it's a synthetic opiate. So it's synthetic heroin.
So somebody's figured out is this a new thing?
It has a purpose. Its purpose, fentanyl was developed to be a painkiller. So fentanyl is managed. It's a drug that's utilized in the medical services for.
It's one of those ones it's always locked up or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a tiny amount can be very, very dangerous.
And it's got out into the streets in a big way.
Oh yeah, big way. And it gets mixed with other things and you don't know what you're consuming.
And when I see those videos of people who look zombie-like, that's fentanyl mixed with something that's kind of numbing them or something?
No, the fentanyl is numbing. So the fentanyl is a downer. It's like a powerful alcohol. It just takes you down to the floor, literally lays you on the floor. So that's what heroin does. It just lays people on the floor. They just sit for sometimes days. and it's physically addictive. So
as soon as you're done a little bit, you
need more. And you can't actually go more than a day or two without it once you start using it regularly, because you get chemically changed and your body, you just suffer. You get very, 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 very sick. You can die actually from the withdrawal of alcohol and fentanyl, because your body becomes accustomed to it and needs it. And so there's a medical process to actually get off drugs and alcohol when you consume it to extreme.
Back in what you saw in the 80s and 90s, I don't know if you were self-aware enough to really make a comparison. Is there a big comparison, a difference between today, what you're seeing on the streets versus back then?
Yeah, it's worse.
We are worse. So worse by number or worse by intensity?
Both. So and it jibes very well with a lot of stuff that you talk about, the destruction of the middle class. So imagine the person who, and this is not everybody, because I was part of the upper middle class. I was telling you before, my mom was a lawyer and eventually a judge. So I wasn't poor. I was just resentful, bitter, and childish. And
yes,
right.
Yeah. I like the way you just so concisely sum it up. Here were my problems.
Yeah.
You've obviously done a lot of work on yourself.
You have to, right?
To sum it up like that.
Yeah. But I think that resentment, bitterness, and immature responses to resentment and bitterness can be focused at society. They can be focused at circumstances that occur in your life. If somebody experiences a trauma, for example, they're a black kid in a white school and they get mistreated, and they don't manage it well, they have a terrible experience, that can change somebody to the point where they hate themselves, they hate the world, and they want to escape it. And the easiest way to escape is alcohol. It's the easiest way to escape. It's free, it's available. Not free, but it's available. It's widely available. Teenagers drink it. It's very common. And it's, alcohol is flat out a gateway drug for some people who have a predisposition to addiction. It's certainly a gateway drug to every single person that I know who's a recovering addict today. And people don't consider it a drug, but it is a very powerful drug. You were talking about it before. I don't know if we recorded it or not, about
my white wine.
Yeah, we did record it, right? You have a few extra drinks, and all of a sudden it changes you and maybe puts you a little bit more immune. There's all kinds of science that 1 drink helps your immune system and 3 drinks damages.
Yeah, I can totally tell the difference between 2 drinks at dinner versus 3 or 4.
Absolutely.
It's like night
Absolutely.
Day.
And so if you have a predisposition emotionally to want to avoid feelings of negative feelings, and again, I'm no psychologist, I'm no doctor, I'm a drug addict.
Well, you've lived through
I've lived through it, and I've also heard many, many people talk about their experiences, and that's all I have. All I have is anecdotal and my own kind of personal experience. So take what I say with a grain of salt. And there's going to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist out there who's like, who is this guy? I got to get on this podcast.
We do have psychologists who listen to this.
Yeah, you got to get one of those psychologists to come and give the real
Every once in a while I get an email from them. The way you said that on that podcast kind of leans me to believe this about you.
Yeah. They're analyzing it remotely. So, for me, I developed a low self-esteem. One of the most interesting things about one of the 2 podcasts I've done in the past with you is that you called me out on it. You and Nick both called me out on showing my low self-esteem during the podcast. And what I tend to do is today I tend to be self-effacing, and I tend to minimize my accomplishments and tell you that I'm not as good, and you guys reacted to that like, no, you should really toot your own horn and feel good about what you've done and feel positive about who you are. And because when you feel positive, and so again, I started to say, and we got off it, but I started to say that, that you have no idea how spiritual and how spiritually nurturing Rockstar Real Estate is. And maybe you do, but I think Nick's the more introspective one, so he probably is more aware of that.
I think we are trying to communicate with people at a different level than just about money itself.
Yeah.
Because to me, life's more about that. And I feel watching people over the years, how you feel about yourself. you can see people, there's a physical manifestation of the way someone feels inside with their outer world. Like I can't argue that anymore because I see it so many times. I can see it in my own life for my own, habits that maybe were somewhat negative, maybe in different degrees, Joe, than to what you've been through.
Sure.
But I can see it in a lot of rock star people when they come in and they talk to us about their lives and then what their physical life looks like. Life's a bit of a mirror. The physical mirrors the internal, and
okay, so that is both true of sliding into depravity, destruction, dereliction, devastation, a lot of D words, a lot of alliteration going on there, and it also is happiness, health, personal enjoyment, personal satisfaction. It's both. If we have habits of behavior that are going to be destructive, then eventually they're going to get more and more and more destructive. It's very difficult to, as everybody knows, you can't really sit still, right? You're either moving forward or you're moving back.
Remind me, what was I guess there's several, but in your mind, what was one of the critical moments that turned your either thinking or, the life around? What was one of them? Because I'm sure it was like a multi-step thing.
Yeah.
But what was one of them?
So ironically, the first thing that comes up is running out of money.
Yeah. Then you just had to make a choice.
What happens is what happened to me, not what happens is, what happened to me was that I traveled a path where I would steal, I would lie, I would cheat, I would take advantage, but it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of mental energy, it takes a lot of physical energy. You're literally running away from people sometimes, right?
Shit.
Right? And
it's a tough way to live, man.
And think about a lie. Think about managing a big lie, how complicated mentally it is, right? So there's a lot of energy. So it's destructive in ways that it deteriorates you physically and emotionally, not only because you're consuming drugs. And like one of the stories that I like to tell people is that there was a period of my life where I weigh 165 pounds today and I'm light. I lost some weight.
You're looking good.
Thank you. And anyways, when I got clean, I weighed 115 or 120.
Wow.
Okay. I used to eat a piece of bread about every week, like one piece of bread. I would have to force the bread in because I didn't want to eat at all.
Why?
Because the drugs that I was consuming destroy appetite. They just shut down your appetite completely. And you never sleep. So I would go 4, 5, 6 days without any sleep at all and be cognizant of the fact that I was still peeing. So I'm like, wait a minute, I'm 98% water, I'm peeing, I'm not drinking any water, and I'm not eating any food. So I'm literally peeing my life down the toilet. So the first thing that happened for me that started getting me on a path to change was realizing I was literally peeing my life down the toilet because we're all water. We're 98%
What's the
water.
thought that goes through your mind? I need to make a change?
Yeah, and that probably started happening when I was 14, and I didn't get clean until I was 27. So I want to make a change. How do I make a change?
Can someone speak to you at that moment?
People did. Lots of people do.
That's what I mean.
And what happens is in my experience, there had to be a willingness on my part to give up all of it. So we have all kinds of expressions, right? Give up the high cost of low living is one of them. Give up the high cost of low living. Another one is the only thing you have to change is everything.
Yeah.
Right. And there's some truth in that in all aspects of living life. But when you're really in a destructive place and you're really unhappy, you're really miserable with how you're living your life, the truth is that some kind of organic or emotional or spiritual submission. So organic being I'm institutionalized, I'm arrested, there's a trauma with my spouse or whatever. There can be all kinds of different organic submissions where I just say, I've had enough. Whatever it is, it comes down to I've had enough. I need to seek change. And thank goodness for me that there was people in my sphere who were cognizant of the fact that I probably needed to seek change years earlier, and they were just waiting for me to ask for help. And so
friends,
family, mostly
family.
Yeah.
They hadn't given up on you.
Yeah. I tell the story, Erica, I love you. My sister Erica. She used to call, and these were obviously before cell phones. She used to leave. I never answered the phone, but she'd call and she'd leave a voicemail like once a week. She'd leave a voicemail.
But she's thinking about you. She loves you.
Leave a voicemail every week. And so,
what did you feel when you listened to that voicemail?
Humiliated, embarrassed, ashamed. Right, and so I never called back.
But it helped.
Well, so we talk about how it ruins the enjoyment of using drugs.
So if you have someone in your life going through something, leaving those messages is worth it. You
want to proactively ruin somebody's enjoyment of using drugs and excessive alcohol. Be unfailingly kind. So what we say today,
it sounds so hilarious. It's just hearing that. But obviously it works. It's almost like,
because you get mad.
It shames. It almost, mad. And I guess at some points it shames you almost into making a change.
If you love them, you can't. And
I'm not saying shame. I'm not trying to use shame as the right approach.
No, but
I just mean I think that could be one of the emotions that you feel when someone is being super kind and you're in that situation. I'm not 100%. Saying to proactively try to shame someone.
That's correct.
As a method to get the change.
The model of love and support. What ends up happening in my sphere. So you're asking me what I'm doing today. So what happens in my sphere today is people get attracted or find out about opportunities to learn about their addiction. They go online, they have a practitioner who tells them, go here, there's a meeting happening, and they walk in and people give them attention, they give them hugs, they're nice to them, they're happy, they're healthy. The people, they walk in, they see these happy, healthy, smiling people. And they get a little bit of kindness and a little bit of love and then a little bit of support. And then we tell who we were. I tell people what I did and how I felt and where I was in life. And they're like, wait, that's kind of like me. And yet look at you now. Like, you're nothing like that today.
So you can
they see the evidence of the change, and that helps with some buy-in,
and that's in some kind of ongoing session meeting, or they're living in a house where this is happening.
Yeah. So for there's lots of methods of getting sober. Okay, there's lots of methods of getting sober. There's medical methods, there's hospitals, there's other institutions, there's halfway houses, there's detox centers. So when somebody is really heavy into fentanyl or methamphetamine or alcohol or cocaine or crack cocaine or any of the big drugs that are on the market today, they need to get to a hospital or a detox center, because they can die when they stop using. They can literally die because they don't know how to take care of themselves. They may not know there may be a medically indicated need to treat them in a variety of ways. So getting to a hospital is a good place to start. And the hospitals obviously are tapped into all of the available treatment options, which include self-help treatment options, which include guided treatment options like with counselors.
You're spending some of your time in this world. What are you doing?
So
are you allowed to talk about this?
I'm allowed a little bit, and in some ways not. So I'll explain it this way. So I checked in with somebody who knows more than me about this just before I got here, and so I got sober with a combination of the things that I'm describing. So I went to a treatment center, an alcohol drug rehabilitation treatment center. I was so messed up. It was a 90-day program. I was so messed up. They said, you should stay for another 90 days. And then they came back.
You're one of the success stories in a different kind of way.
That's right.
Hey, hang around a little longer.
That's right. And they told me later they'd never done that for anybody before.
No way.
So a little bit
Trailblazer. Trailblazer.
So, but I had nowhere to go and nothing to do. So I might as well stay, right?
Oh, shit.
Thank
God you did.
Yeah. So that alcohol drug rehabilitation treatment center is called Hope Place Centers. It's in the Halton region. It's Hope Place Centers. It wasn't called that when I went, but the name has transitioned. And Hope Place Centers is for men and for women. They are separate. Women go to a women's treatment and men go to a men's treatment. And Hope Place Centers provides peer counseling, one-on-one counseling, group therapy sessions, and exposure to outside long-term support networks like Alcoholics Anonymous, like Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, and all of those. If the word anonymous appears in that way, there's even a Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. There's a whole bunch of them, Sex Addicts Anonymous. So there's a whole bunch, and they all have something in common, that they are following a 12-step model, which some people have bought into and really believe in, and some people get exposed to and struggle to accept or don't believe it's the right model for them. But when people get exposed to these outside sources of support, it's all optional. Everything's optional in life. Like, we have choices. Mm-hmm. Like, every day I get up and I thank God for living in Canada, as I'm sure you probably do as well.
Mm-hmm. I criticize it lately a lot, but overall, pretty good place. Yeah.
And we have the freedom of choice. We have the freedom if we want to destroy ourselves. We have the freedom if we want to wreck ourselves. We have the freedom if we want to change ourselves. We can, I literally got clean with an electric frying pan as my primary possession that I was carrying around. I don't know why.
I remember those. I forgot about electric frying.
Plug it in,
like
had
the
a
buttons
lid
on the front.
That's
or
right.
something,
and
like on the handle or something.
And you had the handle and you could turn up the temperature and you could cook your whole meal inside this pan. Had a little vent on it.
Yeah, so they're pretty handy. Smoking. Actually, that's probably a good thing to travel around with in this situation. That's what you need to cook some food.
I had some possessions in storage, but for some reason the electric frying pan and my knapsack and a change of clothes was pretty much what I had on me when I went into the treatment center. And, now today I might have a little bit more possessions than that, a couple of houses. I'm divorced a few years, so between the two of us, a whole bunch of houses. But at the end of the day, those choices are about two things: having an open mind and being willing to change. Mm-hmm. So for me, whenever I see somebody, and so in my circle today, I am still available and still go to meetings where new people who are struggling with their addiction show up, and build relationships with people and try to help those people. And I do it in a variety of different ways. I help organize some of these meetings that happen, and I help and I attend the meetings and just as a participant, and I share a bit of my story and who I am and how I'm feeling. And a lot of it is how I'm feeling today. Like life is good today. I've never felt better about myself. I've never felt better about my circumstances. And I just mentioned I'm divorced and I probably lost half of everything I had financially, but I've never felt better about myself.
I've never tied my finances
to
has nothing self-worth, self-image.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah. Good for you.
They're two completely separate.
Yeah.
I just want to mention something about you, because you're very analytical about your own life. And I think sometimes
critical.
You don't realize the benefit. Like, just coming in here, the way you are with people, you rub off this kind of positivity. And I think that's probably hard for you to accept in some ways. Yeah, I can see that. And I just want to say something, like, from my experience on life, like, life is like a perfect balance. So if you go through and look on a scale of 1 to 10, where you would rate yourself as a person in whatever kind of evaluation you would give when you were really going through that time between 14 and 27. And let's say you would give yourself a score of -9. Yeah. Well, then that means to me, the impact you're having today is at least a +9. Like, if you
appreciate that.
You went through so much, and life is a balance, and now you're giving so much. And I think it can be just hearing you. There's just some, I don't know if it's words or feeling you give off, where I can see it's hard for you to accept that. But when you're talking to Nigel here, and you spoke to Josh, and you spoke to Anthony in our office earlier, and you're speaking to me, you really make people around you think about their own lives. And it's helpful to talk to you, because you bring a perspective that someone like me has never really had. I didn't go through what you went through,
right.
But then you challenge me. Hearing what you went through, I challenge myself to just think about my own life and like what I went through, and how can I change, and how can I move the needle a little bit more forward, and not to show anything else to anyone about myself, just for me. How can I live in integrity? How can I live a life that's going to make me feel proud? So you give this off, Joe. I just want you to know that.
Well, I appreciate that. I will say that, the dating world in your 50s, right? So I will say that meeting people, a lot of people will say things like, well, what do you enjoy doing and what's fun for you? And of course I have hobbies and there's lots of things I do. I ride a motorcycle, I play golf, and, I like to travel, and there's a bunch of things. But what's the most fun for me is talking about important things, whether they are spiritual things, success, health. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Right? And so,
I have a problem with central banking, so I talk about that a lot. Where's the spiritual thing coming up? You've said that now a few times. Where is that coming from in your life? So
spirituality, I don't know really what it means to people. What it means to me, all the things I had thought I was going to talk about today, I didn't think I was going to say anything about this, so I don't know what to say exactly, except that I had a variety of experiences in my life that suggested to me that I was doomed, that I was guaranteed to go nowhere, to be unhappy, and to die miserable. And I asked for help. I got help in a way that was totally unexpected. It was totally out of left field. And the end result of that was a new journey that has given me an awareness that I am a part of something much bigger than me, that I am not just a small ant walking on the earth with no purpose, but that I am that ant. I'm not a big significant guy, but I'm also somebody who has value to offer the world, value to offer my immediate relationships, value to offer myself. Most important, the biggest value to offer myself.
Yes.
And so the spirituality for me is it's not religious, faith-based. We were joking around about our religions before we came on the podcast, and I think you and I would both agree that the world would be a much better place today if people could let go of disharmony and recognize that the way you love your kids is pretty much the way I love my kids, and I don't really want my kids to, suffer or experience World War III or experience an increasing unlikelihood of being able to own a house, or, there's a million things that we don't want our kids to experience, and they all, if we can just stop conflicting so much and just start cooperating. And so to me, spirituality has something to do with that, karmic, cosmic, let's all sit in a love-in 1969, hippiedom. But it's supposed to be about being kind. And so I was telling the chiropractor this morning that one of the things I love about Rockstar is that your number one kind of top line measuring stick when you're in conflict as a company is what's the next right thing to do, right? What's the right thing to do here? What's sometimes morally correct?
Sometimes it
even
sucks.
if we suffer.
We suffer. Shit, that's the right thing to do. And then when that's the feeling, then you're like, damn,
that's so spiritual. That is so spiritual. So you're asking me, what's spirituality? That's a spiritual thing.
Because you just know. You're like, oh,
I hate it.
Yeah, damn, that actually sucks. That's what we have to. That's the phone call we have to make. That's the move. That's the apology we need to give. That's the dollars we need to spend. That's
And so to give you an idea of my journey a little bit and things that I share with newer, addicts trying to recover from their addiction is, I stole from an employer in a big way. Like, I didn't steal. I robbed the employer. Okay.
I forget the story. I'm sure you should.
Well, I don't know if it's the same one because I might have done it more than once.
I shouldn't laugh.
Anyways, so I robbed an employer, and hopefully the statute of limitations are gone, but the employer knows about it, so hopefully they don't want to.
Yeah, that's right. I think you did share
this. This is like over 40 years ago now, I think, or about 40 years ago. And, one of the steps is do the next right thing. So I was making money. I was earning a living. I knew I had stolen this money. I knew it had had an impact at that time on the business. And I reached out and coordinated a very conscientious process to try and make an amends, to try and apologize and to give the money back. And nobody really remembered how much money it was at that point. It was many years later. It was probably 10 years later or more. And, but I went back. And I met with them, and the reason I could do it in part was because they're humble, kind, healthy, mature people.
Yes.
Because a vindictive lunatic might not have
chase
been
you with a baseball bat.
That's right. And
there he is.
That's right. And one of the tenets that we follow, one of the kind of guidelines we follow, is that we don't want to do things that harm, those people or other people, right? And other people could be ourselves. Like, we're not going to do anything I don't want to do anything to apologize if it's going to truly harm me in a foundational way. Like, if you have a choice between shutting down your marketing systems and, apologizing to somebody, well, you're going to apologize to somebody. You're not going to shut down your marketing systems, because doing that is going to destroy your business. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so there's always that balance of not doing harm, right? And so, I'm a big science fiction guy, because there's all these principles that people write about in science fiction about not doing harm, about not doing, not influencing somebody if they don't want to be influenced. And so anyways, so what I do today is I listen, which is remarkable, because actually I brought a bunch of the people that I've been working with together recently for a breakfast. We went to Moe's Diner in Oakville. There's
legendary
for Moe's.
Yeah.
So I got 16 people at Moe's Diner. Last Sunday.
You ate well. I know you ate well.
So 2 guys ordered the $50 breakfast and tried to eat it all.
What? I don't even know what that one is.
That's if you eat it all.
A dozen eggs.
No, what they do is they fill it up with carbs.
Oh,
so there's no possible way you can eat it all, right? Like, you order normal pancakes at Moe's, and they're they're like 6 inches across. You order this special, and they give you like 5 14-inch pancakes, like 10 pounds.
All their portions, the chicken
potatoes.
breast.
Oh yeah,
it's so everything. I love it.
Yeah, it's a good meal. Anyways, I got all these people together, and they agreed that maybe I don't do as much listening as I could do, because I'm a bit of a talker. Sharing what we talk about, sharing our, I talk about sharing my experience, strength, and hope, and what happened and what it was like when it was happening and what it's like now and how much it's changed and how much effort I've put in, and the things that I've worked on mentally, spiritually, with other people as well, to understand, how to get up in the morning and function throughout the day without being a lunatic. So when I was getting clean, I got diagnosed as a sociopath, which is, again, I'm not a clinician, but my definition is somebody who has absolutely no feelings towards other people, no sensitivity about how my life is impacting other people's lives. And it means that I can
pretty heavy.
Steal from you, I could rob from you. And I was behaving sociopathically.
This was told to you?
Oh yeah, by a clinician.
How did you handle that?
Well, I was like, am I? Okay, maybe I am. And one of the reasons I bring it up is because today what I see is a lot of people are coming in with a variety, are trying to get sober, and they've already been diagnosed with a variety of quote unquote conditions and all these mental health labels. And so what I see is a lot of people attempting to get off the dope or off the alcohol, who then immediately say, well, but I'm also this broken or that broken. I'm also damaged in this way. And whether they're using it as a crutch purely, whether it's valid, my input is whatever your doctors have told you likely has some foundation in truth, because it was for sure true for me that I was behaving sociopathically when I was getting sober and before I was sober. However, why not eliminate the consumption of too much of alcohol or drugs and put some distance between that and practice some foundational human relation principles, like, I don't care what version you want to follow, Confucius, Buddha, the 10 Commandments. There's a million of them out there. There's a million books that have been written on how to improve your thinking and your behavior. And my principle is, let's behave our way into good thinking. It's very difficult for me to think myself into a better place. It's much easier for me to act, to take a step forward, to do something useful for myself today, and then retrospectively look back and say, hey, you know what? I feel pretty good about the fact that I just made that change in my life, or I did that improvement. I think back to your story about being grossly unfit, and now look at you. Right. And you had to
I don't want to do it. Just there with Mike yesterday.
Yeah.
And Mike came up with some cockamamie plan. He's like, this is what Mike said last week. I'm really hoping he listens to this. We do at the end of these workouts, we do these 100-calorie sprints, sometimes just 100 calories on an assault bike, these horrible bikes, as fast as you can, or 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off for 10 minutes, 10 rounds. And then last week he's like, well, instead of doing 100 calories, I found something easier we could do. We can do 200 calories, but we'll break it up a little bit so it'll be easier. And I'm like, Mike, I don't know how your brain works, but the way my brain works is that if you do 200 calories, if 100 calories sucks, 200 calories is in no way better. It doesn't matter if the pace at which we do it change. Like this is just, but he's like, no, it's better. And he's just looking at me and I do it. And it actually ended up working out. But I just want to mention when you're talking about all this, the people you surround yourself does seem to matter. Like Nick's always been working out, Mike works out, and now we were in Florida and somebody commented, they're like, what's with all the rock star people who are all taking care of themselves? Like some people like to run, some people like to do body weight stuff, some people like to do CrossFit, some people feel like, but I just think it is just who you hang out with.
Okay,
like
so this is human condition stuff. So I said, if you buy in, so if somebody's struggling with needing to change something in their lives, doesn't matter if it's addiction, you want to change something in their lives, if you buy in to the belief systems of people who have changed that in their lives and copy what they're doing, which is an action. I'm willing to copy Tom. I'm willing to copy Nick. That's what you did. You were willing to copy your brother, right? But you had to get to a place where you were a mess.
It was a bad. I stood on a scale on Thanksgiving and I looked at that weight, and then I got rushed to the hospital a few times on stomach.
It wasn't
pains.
like it was just
it
was a bottom.
Agreed.
We would call that a spiritual bottom.
That was a bottom. And there's something else you're mentioning when you talked about like Buddhism, the 10 Commandments. There's all these different things that you could follow just as maybe different principles to live your life by. I'll never forget reading that book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and that taught me when I was going just into the corporate world to use people's names and remember their names. It's just these little kind of tips on how to just have human relations. And I started applying those and it really worked. And that little book really gave me a framework I didn't have to just interact with people. So to me, it doesn't even have to be a religion. It was just this book that said, hey, if you just do something as simple as remember people's names when you speak to them, next time use their name, they'll really appreciate that. And I did that for over 150 salespeople, and it just, everybody wanted to talk to me and use me on their calls. And it really got my own success was almost pulled up just because I was being polite. It was the weirdest thing. And something else I want to share.
Brings you closer to people, right? So you're right about the circle of influence. So the circle of influence in addiction recovery is that, we call it playmates. What do we call it? Playgrounds, playmates, and playthings, right? So I have to change the playground. I have to change the playmates. And I have to change the playthings. So today, I hang around with a bunch of sober people. I'm addicted to golf. Right? So, I've changed all those things.
Golf seems to have that on many people.
Yeah, anyways.
We had a very competitive mini putt. I don't know if Nigel.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about the mini putt. I saw it referenced somewhere. You must have referenced it.
Yeah, because I was the Canada champ and America champ, but now Nigel has taken the America champ away from me. He kind of crushed me on the last round. There's no doubt. But also, when I was doing real estate, Nick and I were buying rental properties, and I had already flipped properties. Then I bumped into Ruben Furtado at Oracle, and he was like flipping properties on a much grander scale than I was flipping. And I just had this light switch moment. I'm like, oh, instead of flipping properties at this price point or this many a year, we could probably just double everything. And it was just seeing him change my own context. So just another example, like change your playground, change your people, change, what was the last thing?
Playmates, playground, and playthings.
Yeah, like it just... once you change the playground a little bit, you run into sometimes these other people automatically.
Yeah, and then you start playing a different game, and it's a different play thing. Like it's the difference between, four little greenhouses and one red hotel.
Yeah. But I can see if you have an addiction to associate yourself with people in a new playground can be difficult because you're going to be a lot of people are just going to push you away also.
So the degree of what we've learned, what I've learned, and what my friends seem to also share with me is that a lot of what happens in a room with a group of people is happening inside your own head.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. Sure. And if you just stop with the noise and stop focusing on the noise so much and just be present. I was talking to a young man last night, 25-year-old guy, and he's been sober for a little while. It's not like he's a brand new person who's never, had any experiences in being sober, but he's just
struggles with insecurity. He struggles with self-judgment. He struggles with fear. He struggles with feeling like an outcast. Like one of the reasons that he, was an addict was because he felt like, he didn't belong anywhere. Nobody loved him. Nobody cared about him. And that's a very common theme. Nobody cares about me. Nobody loves me. Nobody wants me around. I don't deserve. Once you do a bunch of bad behaviors, it's easy to, because we're mostly moral people, right? So you start to think, I don't deserve it. I'm never going to be worthy of anything. And that's a language that gets repeated. I often say to people, if I talk to you, Tom, the way I talk to myself, you'd hate my guts because I'm so mean to me inside my own head. And the best example is, I tipped it over and spilled the water on the floor. Oh, you're such a fucking idiot. You're so stupid. That's the language that I was using towards myself for many years, even while knowing all this. And so now I'm working on recognizing, no, that's just a spill. It's no big deal. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's not going to change the world. Nobody's going to think about this in 5 years' time. Like, right? Like, who cares?
5 minutes time.
Yeah, 5 minutes time, right? I was cutting an onion, and then I went to put it in the bag that it was in, and I put it in the bag, and it went right through the bag and right to the bottom of the floor, and the flat part of the onion that I cut went splat right on the floor last night, right? And I'm on the phone while I'm doing this with earbuds in, and I burst into laughter because the sound it made and the look that it had on the floor. And the guy's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I just, spilled an onion all over the floor. Well, that would have been, oh my God, what a mess, what a drag, how inconvenient, how stupid are you? Why didn't you pay attention to that? Like the self-judgment.
So how is that self-talk that just comes over time? Because I sometimes question that about myself. Like sometimes you could be just overconfident too, because I sometimes see people that make no mistakes.
It looks like it's arrogant. And there's a balance.
It's this weird throttling of this that seems,
like you said about life being a balance,
difficult. Yeah.
So it's both sides. So my language, I need to circle myself with people who laugh at me when I'm stupid and who support me when I'm lonely and are sad, and both, right? It's got to be a mixture of all of those things. It's got to be a balance. Like true friends are going to be pretty honest with me at times. Maybe I don't want to hear it. But I work on, again, willing and open-minded, right? So the core things that helped me to get sober in the first place was to be open to the idea that what I've been doing isn't working. So I'm willing to change.
Wow. Yeah. Huge first step.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to listen to other people who have done this before. And boy, oh boy, didn't I just really describe somebody who's got their money in mutual funds too? Right. Like it's the same thing. I'm open to changing, and I'm willing to doing it the way other people are doing it and being successful at it. So I think that one of the reasons that for me that I'm even willing to sit here and have this conversation is because I see that really it's not that different. It's just a grosser, and literally gross at times. Like it's really gross being an addict at times. It's a grosser example of
it's a different manifestation of the same
kind of lines of reasoning and the same kind of experiential belief systems, right? Like I get stuck in a path. So one of the things that happened to me recently, here's the language that if I wasn't regularly exposed to Rockstar, this is the kind of language that I would have been living by as it relates to investing. So I had several $100,000 in an RSP. Okay. And it was in mutual funds. And there was a period of 5 years where it was like static, like there was absolutely zero growth. And my wife at the time was like, I hate this guy that's got us in these mutual funds. It's all his fault. And I'm like, oh, actually, no, it's not. It's my fault because I got us in the mutual funds. I bought, whatever he was selling. Right. And so I pulled it all. Okay. And I pulled it all immediately prior to the largest bull run in the stock market history. So when was that? 2010? I don't know when it was. 2011.
Yeah, about
right?
then.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 2009 was actually the very, very bottom, and then it just rocked.
Okay, so let's say I pulled in 10 or 11, and I bought a couple of student rentals with that money. It took the tax hit, bought the student rentals, and they're about 45 minutes. 60 minutes in bad weather from my house, manage them myself. Okay. So we go 10 years further along. right? And the student rentals, because they're in a small town, a small community, I'm not going to name the community because we don't want to be mean to any towns, but because they're in a smaller town in a not so great community with not a lot of other economic prospects, they're not growing at the 7 or 8%, GTA value in terms of appreciation over that period of time. Well, pretty close, because the rule of 72 says 7.2 times 10 years, and they've doubled in value. So my perception is they haven't grown very much, but they have. They've value, right? I don't know if you.
Well, you didn't buy. Did you buy them all cash? Those ones?
No, we put half.
So there's leverage too. Then
there was leverage, so it's gold. Yeah. So the money has multiplied. The problem is there's been a lot of work. There's a lot of tenant turnover. We've managed those ourselves, and it would be easy now. I have to evaluate everything because of getting divorced, and so we put a number on it. We say that's what it's worth today, and it was 2021. And now it's like, okay, now you want to sell them in 2023 or 2024, and they're not worth as much.
Of course.
And so it would be so easy to say, oh my God, if I had just left it all in the mutual funds. So easy to say that. The truth is, the odds of it going up 7.2% compounded for 10 years to double in value in the 10 years. Like, I didn't do the research, but I pretty much know because I got lots of friends who are still with that same investor. And they haven't seen a doubling and a quintupling. And actually, they took me on a boat cruise 10 years ago when all this was going on. And they said, well, if you 3 times leverage your investing with us, 3 times leverage you're investing with, so you borrow, so you put $100,000 in and you borrow $300,000 more, we'll give you the same return as real estate. That's what the guy said to me on the boat.
Which is what they have to do. But wow.
Because it's the reverse of what we do. We're really 3 times leveraged as well when you really think about it.
Yeah. It could be 4 times. Yeah.
Could be 4 times leverage. Right. And could be 5 times.
Could be 5 times. Yes.
And so, but what ends up happening is that the asset doesn't plummet potentially as much as 98% in a given season. And the institution that lent you the money says, well, now you have to pay us all back.
Yeah, it's not marked to market in real time either.
Yeah, that's right. And there's no underlying surety of risk for the lender. So the lender will come and call the margin at any time, which doesn't happen normally in real estate. Keep paying your mortgage, they don't want to call you. They just want you to pay your.
Yeah, I've actually never seen that happen.
Right.
Maybe I'm sure someone hearing right now. There's probably some private lender. I shouldn't say. There's probably some private money out there where the private money lender did say, "But hey, you're paying, but I want my money back."
Yeah, but that would be built into the contract. They would have known going in.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that for me, my recovery from addiction, which has not been a linear path. If anybody is listening to this and thinks, "What a great guy Joe is," he was a drug addict and said he was a thief and whatever else he was, and today, I'm just happy, healthy, joyous, and free. The truth is that I still have lots of things about myself that I would like to improve. I have habits that are not productive. I have lines of reasoning that lead me to dead ends and dastardly, emotional feelings. And but what I refuse to do is suffer. So the best line that is in my circle is somebody I don't spend a lot of time with, sadly, because he's in Halifax, is my brother, and one of my brothers, and he likes to say, "Shit happens, suffering is optional." Right? Shit happens, suffering is optional. And stuff's going to happen in life, how I choose to respond to it. And again, this is one of the reasons why I follow so much of your productive content, because isn't that really an underlying message to the point where you guys have a sticker with a turd? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
he deals with the most shit wins, right?
Yeah. And I always try to think, if shit happens, I'm always like, oh, this is going to be interesting to see what happens on the other side.
Yeah, but you weren't like that 10 years ago, because I've been following you for a long, long time. You were Mr. Catastrophe. You were right. You were Mr. Tearful.
Oh man, we've been through a lot of shit, and we've been through a lot of shit.
I was coming here and
we've blocked shit with our bodies. More Nick than me. More Nick than me on that one. I didn't get to that level, but we have blocked shit. But yeah, I thought we've lost everything before, and then oh my God.
Okay, speaking of blocking shit, I have to give a shout out to my 20-year-old daughter, who is a 4.0 GPA, getting 3 degrees at once in university at the same time, and plays on, and she's recruited to play hockey. She's a goaltender playing for a university in the U.S., And hi, Tia. And for some reason, we thought also being a property investor at 20 made a lot of sense too. So actually, she was a property investor at 18.
Wow.
So she bought a investment property in the city that she lives in the U.S., and what made me think of it is blocking shit, because she literally had the shit flying out of it. They flushed the toilet.
You're one of us,
standing in the
Tia.
basement, and it's shooting up out of the...
Tia, you're one of us. By the way, congrats on everything. Congrats on everything, Tia, but you're one of us. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, a good egg. She's like, yeah, I'm done with my 4-year experiment or 3-year experiment of being a student rental investor. I'm going to just go a year or two of just being me. Free of it. But
who can blame her?
Kudos to her for the humility and the hard work that she's done to.
Do you think it's interesting with that grade point average? Obviously, Joe, you're a smart guy.
Thank you.
Do you think sometimes that could almost be a hindrance because you have the ability to hold a lot of things in your brain, so you can analyze things in 10 different angles that other people cannot?
Yes.
So sometimes your intelligence can almost, it's like something to manage. And I find with a lot of different intelligent people I know, they can be, if they're self-aware, they can be critical of themselves in the way they view the world, because they see people's faults and they see what people are saying versus what they're doing very clearly. And they're able to analyze a lot of this data where a lot of people cannot hold that much data. And they can be then self-fulfilling in that they can be critical of a person because they see the way someone's saying something versus the way they're acting. And then they're like, well, why am I critical? I'm judging. I shouldn't be that way. And it's just, I find with people who have the ability to process lots of information like you, there's obviously a huge positive to being able to do all that. But there's like this there's negative side that you have to kind of balance. Have you ever talked about that or thought about that a little bit?
So if you build on the fact that I hated myself, and I hated what I was doing to myself, and I thought I was crazy. So I thought I was a psychopath, and then I got told I was a sociopath. So I hated me, and yet I was I used to get high and read novels.
Just as an escape.
Yeah, I'm a cerebral guy. I actually, in a phone call on the way over here, I'm like, okay, give me advice on, what I can say and what I can't say in this upcoming podcast I'm about to do. And the guy says, Joe, you're overthinking it.
Yeah.
You're planning what you're going to say. You have no idea. And I said, yeah, the truth is Tom's going to take this thing in a million different directions. I have no idea what we're going to talk about. So yes. So because I tend to the negative thinking, as an addict, I catastrophize. I think that every situation is the end of the world. My poor coworkers over the last 30 years, I'm Mr. Fixer. Wherever I've worked, I'm Mr. Fixer. I'm the guy who can, I take the buck stops here kind of approach, and it's going to get resolved. And then somebody will bring me a problem. I'm like, oh my God, what's the end of the world? Then eventually I get wrapped around, I got to fix it. But the reality is that's where my natural mind goes to the negative. So with all this information and accumulating opinions and having a perspective and developing my thoughts on things, it is dangerous to me to buy into my own bullshit. And so there's a song. So I break a lot of stuff in my life down to songs. So there's a great one for this. It's, oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way, right? So, right? Right? Can you think of that song in your head? Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble. Anyways, so for me, recognizing that whatever the other person's perspective is, whatever the decision making being made by the government, whatever the decision making being made by my industry, by my coworkers, by whoever it is, by my relationship, acceptance is the key to my own sense of self-satisfaction, my own sense of comfort. So if I look at it and say, is this, a flag I want to plant and a war I want to have? Then I'm going to do something about it. And because I do have prodigious energy for things that are important to me, if I put my mind to it, things will change. Period.
I can tell.
right?
Yeah.
Period. Things will change if I put my mind to it. But I have to decide. I have to choose. What are the wars? You know, my dad used to say to me when I was an idiot to my mother as a kid, he used to say to me, is it better to be loved or to be right? And it's always
and you didn't, that didn't resonate at
no,
that time.
I was always right, and I didn't give a shit about being loved.
So at that time, it was more important to be right.
Yeah, and it's immature, and it's spoiled, and it's self-centered, and it's self-absorbed.
So you have more empathy now?
Which means I'm not a sociopath, by the way. That
Yeah.
you know, and it was funny.
That breaks that definition. Well, good.
Yeah. Like I actually care what you think, how you feel, what's going on for you, how I can help. You know, I'd like to do more. Sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough, which again is that language that you have in your head of, oh, I'm so prodigious and I could do all these
You don't
things.
even know the way you've impacted people. Listen, we were at an event probably way back when there was maybe 300 people in the room, and you were standing at the side of we were on this little stage talking about some economic update, central banking again, whatever I was up there saying, and you were at the side, I think it was before the whole thing started or at a break, and you kind of screamed out. I remember you standing at the side, but maybe you were sitting, but you were at the side and you were like, well, how about something to invest with our RRSPs? Why don't you guys you think you're so hot shit, eh? Why don't you guys? No, I know you didn't say that part. That's the way I like to remember it.
I remember
all my friends will say that I like to accentuate stories. So I add in these little exaggerations, and I always say, but isn't the story better a little bit when I add these things in there? So you said, yeah, how about you find something with RRSPs where we can invest in? And that led to us finding Graybrook, and I can't tell you, there's many people here now that have been with us for over a decade and they're like, actually, Tom, I'm going to stop investing in properties
houses,
and I'm going to switch all my stuff over to Graybrook because, you know, we're at this age now.
For Graybrook, you have me to thank for all that.
Yeah, and I just want you to know, do you know how many people have impacted who have properties and stuff in Graybrook? And I was just meeting with another gentleman who's been through some rough times in his recent life. And he told me this, that if it wasn't for Graybrook, he doesn't know where he'd be because it's been he's invested over years. So every once in a while, there'll be a hit of income when a project completes. So every 2 or 3 years. And you know, I don't want to get into all the things he's been through in his life, but these hits of income right now from seeds he planted years ago are really beneficial in his life. And Joe, that all came from a comment that you said that made us think, wow, yeah, we really should have something for people who have RRSP money. And then it made us listen to Graybrook more. And then we met with them like a dozen times and we thought they were like crazy or something. It turns out we couldn't find a hole in what they were doing. So we engaged in this long-standing, I think have a relationship with them for, I don't know, a dozen years or something. It's been
it's been at least 10 because I've been with them the whole time, right?
Okay.
Like I actually, just to be clear, you're investigating them and I actually started with them before you partnered.
I forgot that.
Yeah.
So, but it was your comment, and just think how many, since we've mentioned them, how many people have benefited through your comment.
Wow.
That one comment.
My favorite was when I sent you the fax. Do you remember the fax?
I do remember this.
So you asked for feedback on the fax, and I started giving feedback, and I ran out of room.
The space,
so
and you wrote it all around. Yeah. You've been really helpful. Here's what else you guys are doing wrong, and I would like to know. You're really great at what you're doing, but if you just did it this way.
Look, I love what you guys have done.
Yeah, you're being now we're reversing roles, and you're being too kind. But think about that one thing you brought up, and the impact that's had. That's coming from you. Like that, literally. I think that's all the little impacts we all have. That when someone's critical on themselves and they say one comment to somebody at the car dealership and they don't think that's a big deal, and that person, that one comment, the door you held open, the beautiful comment you gave on someone that day on how they look or something or how they made you feel, could change the whole freaking course of their life. And I know that sounds silly, but I believe it 100%.
So I'm going to bring this back to, you're probably late, right?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm still good. We're good.
So I'm going to bring it back to something that's been resonating with me and I've been thinking about throughout all of this is, so just a couple of weeks ago, a guy who I had done service work with to help these committees organize themselves and handle our websites and this is not my business, this is my kind of spiritual addiction recovery journey. We have websites and we have all kinds of stuff that helps people to find their way. And this guy worked on the website but he was still struggling with his addiction at the same time, and he just died just 3 weeks ago from his addiction. And that's the latest of a series of too many people to even name off that I've known over the last 30 or so years. I know a family where I used to party. One of the youngest son was my tenant when I was still an active addict, and I used to rent out rooms because then I would live for free. I told you this story, right? But that was I had multiple apartments where I was doing those kind of rental things. And anyways, he's the only one still alive of all the boys from addiction. I know people who I partied with in the 1980s who are still using drugs today. And, I like to think I look okay.
Mm-hmm. You're looking great.
And I'm a little bit genetically blessed. My mom looked great right into her 80s, so I'm fortunate that way. But, people don't look so good when they've been using drugs from, 15 to 50. And, I also know people who have been written off by society, by their community, by their family, completely victims of some of the most heinous acts that society can imagine. Both war victims and home type victimizations. And they're sober and they're living wonderful lives. Some of them are wonderfully successful in giving back to others. Some of them are, limping along, but trying to, piece together a life for themselves. And so, for me, seeing those people, like a lot of those people will never be a Rockstar client. And they're not likely to become too exposed to somebody who's essentially putting themselves out there as helping investors buy real estate. And, so to me, remembering that there's a lot more of those people out there than there are of us that are buying real estate. And, we've all seen it. I mean, how many people have I saw a Rockstar video, Anthony, and one of your coaches with his house that got destroyed.
With the hoarder. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that person is sick. They're unhealthy and they need help. And I can't say it enough. Not everybody's going to change. Not everybody's going to recover. Many people are going to die in their misery, and it's tragic. But if there's anything you can do or I can do to help them, it's worthwhile. And often all you can do is lend an ear and be kind. So that's
consistently sounds like consistently.
Well, I've done it I shouldn't even say I've done it consistently. There's a period of time where I wasn't very useful to people. I had some people in my world, but I wasn't doing as much. But I know people who have done it so consistently.
I just mean even your sister leaving that voicemail.
Yeah, those kind of
that's what I mean.
Yeah, being supportive.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, so I've made this one guy call me every day for the last 45 days. Every day he has to call me. If he doesn't call me, I don't know what'll happen. There's nothing that'll happen. He won't suffer any consequences, but he'll feel bad. So, we have to talk every day, right? And by talking every day for a few minutes, I've gotten to know the person, and he's just like me. And yet he's actually, I'm a Jew, he's a Muslim, right? Yeah. I come from, reasonably healthy mental circumstances and a lot of success and a lot of people that did a lot of good things when I was a kid, and I was just a spoiled punk ass prick. And this guy was a victim of a society in another part of the world that they had no control of, and they became refugees and the whole deal. And they're it's totally different, and yet he's exactly the same. Fearful and insecure and jealous and neurotic and overthinks it and
it's easy to label people at the group level, at the community level, but at the individual level, we all have the same fears, similar. The same challenges, the same success.
Similar, right? Very similar. And so so it helps me. I don't know if I'm helping him, but it certainly helps me.
That's the weird part. It's so interesting that you said that. Like here at Rockstar, sometimes people come up to us and say, oh my gosh, you've helped me in this way and that way. They don't understand how much, I guess, maybe us trying to help people has helped me.
And that's the spiritual root of this. So there's a principle that I believe in, that if it is spiritual, it will live. And if it's not, it will go away. And And it's for everything. It's for macro stuff and it's for micro stuff. We all think that, macro, we all think the economy is teetering on some major, reset or whatever. Well, if it's spiritual, it will live. I don't know how everybody borrowing gajillions of dollars can be spiritual, right? But on the more, smaller community level, building a business, hard work, and there's a bunch of things that have to go into it. But at its core, if you treat your clients right, if you treat your employees right, if you build something that has some logic and sense and meaning for people that are involved with it, it's probably going to survive. And it may end up being something way bigger than you could ever dream. And I think that's, just from watching you guys since, edition 1 of the newsletter, I would say that's probably true for you guys. You had no idea. There's a line we say in addiction recovery. We say, if I sat down when I was getting sober and set a series of goals for myself, and stuck to it, and that was all I wanted to achieve in life, I would have sold myself so short, because who I saw myself as at 20 whatever or 30 whatever was totally different than who I am today and who I've grown into and what I've learned and what I've achieved. And we get growth from recognizing our own achievements. We get growth from recognizing achievements of others. And we also can overachieve what we thought we could do just by doing what you always talk about, just taking the next actions today that are going to have meaning,
And I think helping I'm sure when you take those phone calls, like you just said it gives you purpose and meaning to help people. Like, I think when I was younger, you read these financial books and you're like, well, if I had this much cash flow, if I had this much money in the bank, that would be it. And I would be taking vacations and I'd be happy. And now I've met enough people to know that that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
Definitely there's some level of financial freedom that allows you to maybe go to the restaurant and order what you want and not really have to care about it too much. And that's kind of nice. But beyond maybe that, everything else, all the meaning in life seems to come from the relationships and what you're putting out with other people and getting back from those relationships.
And your regular message that resonates regularly in your material about that topic. I mean, your life, your terms, right? The whole thing. It ultimately is why I'm sitting here today.
You're being I feel you're being too kind, but thank you. This goes to everything we're talking about, and then myself, because then it's interesting for anyone listening when you have your own self-talk. When Joe was just saying that about Rockstar and where Rockstar could go, your self-talk immediately, here's my self-talk. I don't know if this is helpful for anyone. My self-talk is like, shit, Joe's saying all this nice thing. Does that mean if Rockstar doesn't do well over the next few years, we've fallen off the course and we're not serving people? Yeah. So I'm just sharing that because that's my own self-talk of when Joe's saying these beautiful, kind things, right? You just immediately go, oh shit, I got to make sure we keep doing things right. Otherwise, will people judge Rockstar and not being around and say maybe they went off the course? And I'm just sharing that because that's my self-talk. And I think sometimes people look at me and oh, Tom, you got it all figured out. No, we're all battling our own shit at all times.
There's two things that come to mind. One is that, with great success comes great responsibility, or whatever the line is. But the other one that comes to mind for me is, have you read Ayn Rand? Right? So that idea that not everybody is going to lead, but the leaders have a degree of responsibility to continue to lead and not to step aside. Is this her
Atlas Shrugged book? Or I've not read Fountainhead.
Yeah. They're all really thematic.
Yeah, okay.
They really are. And, the idea that we become targets. Like, how many times have you become a target?
Yeah.
Right? We become targets because we're leading, because we're following what we think is morally and spiritually and practically correct. And we're not always right. And sometimes, you can see merit in what the target shooter is saying, and you have to learn from it and pivot a little bit.
Makes you better.
But the reality is that not everybody wants to be out there on the stage. Not everybody wants to, be the leader, the guide, the one doing it. And I used to say that I've always either been the leader of the pack or the enemy of the pack. I've never just been part of the team, right? I've never ever been part of the team, right? I struggle with just being part of the team, right? Yeah. And so the problem for me is if if my responsibility is to lead in some endeavor, whether it's helping somebody else, or now I take on the obligation that means I can't ever use drugs again, because if I, am helping these people stay sober and then they see me go, then what does that mean? Like, holy fuck, pardon my French, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's not ever again, because I subscribe to the belief that all I can control is what's happening right now. Right now, my life is perfect. I'm sitting in a podcast that's about to wrap up. I've got a meeting to go to next. You've got a meeting to go to next. And life is good. We're smiling. We're happy. We're enjoying ourselves. And, maybe something useful has been said.
No, for sure.
Right?
How does someone, because I know you have places to be here as well. How do these places that you participate in, how do they get funding? I'm sure some of it's the government and then donations.
Not a single, what I'm involved in, not a single dollar comes from any outside source. It's strictly self-funded, strictly.
So what do you mean? People don't donate to it, or that's what you mean?
Once you attend, if you believe you have a problem with drugs, then you're allowed to give money. If you don't have a problem with drugs, if you're the mother of somebody who has a problem with drugs, we won't take your money.
Oh, so there's no way for someone listening to donate?
We're fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions.
Huh. Wow.
And what it does is enables us to just serve our purpose. And our purpose is to help addicts and alcoholics who are still suffering, and gambling addicts and other people who suffer from other related disorders that are suffering. So
is there anything you would like to leave people with that you would want them to check out if somebody's suffering? A resource like via a website or a book, or I don't know, something to say? Like, is there some way that someone might be listening to someone who has some addiction in their lives and they don't know what to do next?
Yeah, I think that the beauty of today's society, I can't endorse any one organization because I'm not a representative or a spokesman for an organization. So it's my responsibility not to name names. I'll give you a hint. It means that we stay anonymous.
Got it.
Okay. And by remaining anonymous, we're able to do useful work. But I think that in today's society, you go online and you type in, I have a family member who's struggling with drug addiction. I have a family member who's struggling with alcohol. The search is going to produce an unlimited 100,000 links that you can follow. And it's a bit of a rabbit hole. But so I read a message from somebody just last night from our website. And the message said, in a nutshell, it said, I have a sibling, I think it was a sibling, a family member who's, wrecking their life, and their spouse's life is being ruined as a result. I don't know what to do. What can I do? How can I help this person? That's the message that we were sent. And so somebody from our side sent a response.
Got it.
And let them know, here's a list of things that you can do. Okay. And so I think ultimately it boils down to having an open mind and asking for some help, and being willing to follow the help that's proffered. There's different types of means out there. The government certainly provides some facilities, and private institutions provide some facilities, and then you have these independent organizations that aren't looking for anything from anybody except wanting to help people who are suffering, and there's a ton of them out there. So hopefully, hopefully if somebody hears this and doesn't know what to do, they can reach out to you, they can reach out to me. I'm easy to find. You just Google my name, and apparently podcasts come up along with my criminal history and a bunch of other things.
Oh, man.
When Joe was 14, he was put into a mental institution. We'll just leave it with that, right?
Well, Joe, I just want you to know that our paths have crossed in this way, and Nick and I both, when your name comes up, we just is it a positivity that comes from just talking about you when you're not even around?
No,
so nice it really in some way, by you supporting us, it's given us confidence to keep going. There's a select number of people that really believed in us early when we had the real doubts. There's still doubts.
Yeah.
But when we really are like, what are we doing? And this is a struggle and this is hard. And are we going to make this? And people like yourself supported us. And you have no idea the confidence that gave us in those moments. So when you were going around trying to check us out, we were feeding off you being in our presence at these classes and events and sending these faxes with all the feedback written around like that. Really,
it must have been a long time ago because it was a fax.
Yeah, we kept the fax for a long time. I think into 2018, finally someone said, hey, should we get rid of the e-fax number that you guys like got from a physical fax machine to the virtual? And we're like, no, somebody still might communicate. Keep it one more year. Renew it one more year. But yeah, that's the impact you had on us. And there's probably a small group early on and you were one of them. So I don't know how to say this other than just thank you for, you know.
Well, thank you because you've had a similar, influence on me and I'm grateful for the association and I promote you out there and tell people.
We know you do. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We know you do.
So,
and one day I'll be able to golf like you, but I probably have to go a little bit more.
I have
to go more.
What'd you make a par on that?
I think I made a par on the last
hole. It was like this incredibly difficult, incredibly long.
He just got
two
that was one of those
shots and two beautiful putts and he's in the hole.
Definitely, because I still remember it. So I know
like
that's
a 6 or a 7 on that hole, and he made a 4.
You can play. You can play. Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Yeah. Merry Christmas, Joe. Yeah. Thank you. Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Terms show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.